Welcome, one and all, to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 189. I am your one and only host for this podcast, the Angry Raccoon, bringing you the first podcast of April 2022. And boy, has it been, fortunately and unfortunately, another eventful 2 weeks since the last podcast. A lot of things are happening in the world, in this country. It's honestly a little bit depressing to some extent, which is why this podcast kind of got scrapped to some extent. I was going to talk about some of the more troubling things regarding media, but yeah, it was just a bit too much to really have such a downer of an episode, especially when I'm in, I guess, a much better, mood or position to some extent, which I'll explain in a bit. But yeah, a couple of the things that kind of came out, a lot of really shady stuff happening with media, especially regarding the West, which I'm not happy with, lots of people unhappy with, but I didn't really think there was much point in me, adding my 2 cents into it when, clearly these things are not good and people don't want them. And there's just, greed behind them to some extent. But before we kind of get into the main meat of the podcast, I do want to mention once again the whole situation with the war happening in Ukraine as of right now. It is still unfortunate that it seems to be ramping up, with lots of sides around the world now getting involved in the war. The situation has become frightening again, not to say it never was or became mild at any point, but yeah, I'm trying to stay positive about it, and things will get better. That's what I keep telling myself. I'm trying not to think about it too much to some extent, although the implications as to where it could go are, like I said, a bit frightening. But it's just a matter of when this will end, because it will end soon, and hopefully in a slightly more peaceful way. It is a bit unfortunate as well, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, my main concern, really, or my main worry, is the safety and position of people in Ukraine and the people in Russia, because you guys have my thoughts, because it's not easy that these two countries are at a bit of a war with each other because of what one person's actions, which is just awful when you really think about it. This is the reason why so many people don't like old people, basically, or to put it bluntly, because their logic and the way they go about things is disgusting at the end of the day. But I'm not going to talk about it too much. I'm going to shift focus onto other things, such as what I've been doing over the last 2 weeks. And I haven't really watched or played or done anything. The main thing I have been doing is I've been working on my room. This last week, 3 weeks to be exact, I spent putting together an archive master document of all the media and all the art I own. So that's films, TV, anime, books, games, music, everything is categorized and ordered. I now know everything I own. I now know when I got it, where it is, what order it is, what condition. It's all pretty much done. And I also spent the last 4 days, although I'm still kind of working on it, arranging my room, putting said collection on display and internally organizing my room, some stuff around the house as well. It's very satisfying. It's a satisfying feeling being able to see everything I own. It was a tough process, but it was worth it. I mean, it does feel like a great weight has been taken off my shoulders, to say the least. And my room being organized as a result, my life and my mind is much more organized. It's a little bit more active, I guess you could say, to some extent. I don't know who said the quote, but I guess this one is appropriate for how I feel, and that is, a healthy mind is an organized mind. Or it might be the other way around. I'm not too sure. I heard it in Batman the Brave and the Bold. So, yeah. But let's continue on and talk about a couple of things. As I'm sure you can kind of tell from the episode length itself, it's not a big episode. Like I said, I cut things because it was just a bit too depressing. I didn't want to obviously make a more, overtly positive podcast, but at the same time, I want to talk about things that were at least a bit interesting to some extent and worth talking about. So, yeah, like I've said many times before, and I keep saying the word said, and I'm probably going to say said a couple more times. Yeah, I don't put filler in these podcasts. If the episode is 10 minutes long, it'll be 10 minutes long, and it will hopefully be good, because I'm all about quality over quantity. So let's talk about the first trailer, which we have a couple of games to talk about, and that is going to be the first one, which is already out, and yeah, I would highly recommend it, given even given how little I've actually seen of the game, and that is going to be Forgive Me Father, which is essentially a HP Lovecraft mixed in with classic shooter Doom style game. And it was only a matter of time before someone thought to combine, the Eldritch horrors of, Lovecraft and, classic games like Doom. And yeah, it works well. I mean, damn, this game does look awesome in a lot of regards. I mean, the cel-shaded comic book style looks amazing, and I love how they've kept the animation like stilted or slow in reference to like the older games that it's clearly taken inspiration from. Doom being one of the main ones, of course, obviously Blood, and 2018's Dusk, which is another game which I think took inspiration from both Doom and Blood. So it's kind of almost a full circle situation going on here, which is great. I love the variety of weapons in this game. You have like a gross, like pulsating gun, which is, very Lovecraft to some extent. A brush item or a wand that you just kind of cast magic with. And in the trailer, and I'm not sure if maybe it was just the way it was edited or what, I might have to actually watch the game and see it, but you kind of like light a cigar, then you have like a light sword. I'm not sure if they're connected. I'm not sure if like lighting the cigar is like a way to get your health back or what, but it's pretty cool to have like an amazing looking, sword that you can use to add a nice bit of melee to the game. I don't believe games like Doom had melee. I think it was either Dusk or Blood. You had a pitchfork, which was pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, I'm just confused and amazed by some of these stuff in the game. The only game I can think of that lets you use like demonic books / pages and other like weird items like that is Clive Barker's Undying. That game had some really weird stuff in it, like you had like a gun that was like a moving dragon. It was pretty cool stuff. But I hope this game does its own thing in terms of like referencing Lovecraft. I want this game to show me like grotesque monsters, and I want to be able to like kill a disturbingly creative boss at the end. I don't just want it to be Cthulhu. I think that'd be kind of lame. I know he's in the trailer and he's in some of the promotional images, and I know that you can't have Lovecraft without him. He is the poster boy, but I really hope that they do something new and original because Lovecraft, it kind of is like an easy setting or an easy target to some extent. A lot of people kind of go at it as, oh, it's Cthulhu, it's tentacles, it's monsters, it's water, story done. And so many games have kind of failed to really understand the core of some of Lovecraft's ideas. Granted, it is quite tricky to read and, really kind of do something interesting with it. Very few games have done that or accurately. The only one I can really think of is Call of Cthulhu, which was on the Xbox and I think on PC, but that's a very broken game to some extent. But yeah, I am really looking forward to this game. I hope to play it. Hopefully it is on consoles and hopefully it gets a physical release because, yeah, that's right up my alley, especially given that I played the remake of Shadow Warrior not too long ago. But moving on to the next game, these are two that are more just announcements for the most part, but they're worth talking about. The first one is going to be Return to Monkey Island, which was a big surprise. I was not expecting this series to come back. The Monkey Island games have been on my list for a while, and it's cool to see Ron Gibson, I believe that is his name, yeah. Ron Gilbert, sorry. I don't know where I got Gibson from. Ron Gilbert make another game with the help from Devoe Digital, and I'm surprised that LucasArts Films is still around. I'm not sure if that's like a Husk studio or Lucas themselves still hold some kind of rights over the Monkey Island games. I don't know how that works, but I mean, it does mean that the game is in good hands. Devolver Digital have a pretty good track record, and Ron, I think, knows what he's doing at this point, so it should be interesting. And it makes sense to bring the Monkey Island franchise back. I mean, it has a strong audience lost my train of thought. It has a strong audience, and in today's gaming landscape, we could do with something different and new. Yes, I know these kinds of games date back, next to 30 years, but compared to what's coming out right now, nothing's going to look like this, nothing plays like this, so it's fresh. Plus, although point and clicks are niche, no one's really making them, no one's really raving about them too much, unfortunately. The last one that kind of had that sort of point and click feel was Disco Elysium, which is still a game I need to play. yeah, they're still popular among old and hardcore gamers. So it's going to have its audience. It's going to do well. It isn't going to sell 12 million copies like Elden Ring, but it's going to hopefully satisfy everyone who wanted this game, everyone who's fan of the franchise, and hopefully make some new fans from this new game. And, you know, hint, hint, maybe re-release the old ones on Switch and PS4 and PS5 for us who haven't played them yet. But hey, fingers crossed that does happen. But the next trailer I want to talk about, which isn't even really a trailer, it's just a masterpiece, a work of art, really. And that is the trailer or announcement trailer for Hyperlight Breaker, which is going to be Studio... What are their names called again? I completely forget their names. Oh yeah, Heart Machine. Great name. It's going to be their next game following Solar Ash, which literally just came out. And yeah, the first game, which is Hyperlight Drifter, which is another game on my list. I'm being stubborn and I won't play it until I get a physical copy. You know, if anyone knows where I can get a copy or would like to give me a copy, please let me know. Yeah, it's still on my list, and this trailer itself was an amazing announcement, which is basically a short animation done by Studio Grankle, who did the trailer or the opening cinematic or opening trailer for Hades, as well as the opening for The Legend of Vox Machina, which is the Critical Role animated series that's currently streaming on Amazon Plus or Amazon, whatever it's called. Yeah, the animation itself is perfect. It's fluid, it's rhythmic, it has a nice rhythm to it with an excellent sense of speed. Like, it's like just under a minute long, but it is fantastic. Like, it's ridiculous how nice that animation is. And even if you don't know anything about games or this series, just watch this animation, because yeah, it is awesome. I mean, we do see a tiny bit of gameplay at the very end of the trailer. It's just like a character walking out to a world. But it is cool to see the developers, Heart Machine, create something more 3D and more open world, which I am really looking forward to. I want to apologize for that child that's fucking screaming. Hopefully their style translates well to this kind of genre, because I know in the past, mainly with the jump from Nintendo 64 to PS1, some people did not translate well. But I have faith in that studio. They know what they're doing to some extent. And yeah, let's see them experiment a little bit. And the final trailer I want to talk about is going to be for Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. This is the 2022 film based on the shorts of the same name. I hadn't actually seen the shorts this film is based on, but yeah, I watched them. I really liked them. And I also didn't know that Jenny Slate voiced Marcel, so now I'm really hyped for this film. But yeah, this film itself more accurately, it's very heartwarming. And I love how wonderful, or I do wonder how exactly they're going to expand on a series of very small shorts into a film. But I'm interested to see the end results. I'm hoping they're good, because this film does have a lot of potential to be a little bit of an oddball, you know, sleeper hit kind of film. Like I said, I don't think this film is gonna, you know, break box office charts, but it certainly will have its audience to an extent. And, you know, the general vibe of this trailer is great. I mean, it's very faithful in terms of, you know, what I'm sure people like from the original animations, and the animation itself and cinematography has improved, you know, since that original piece. I would say a lot of the scenic shots are framed beautifully, and I like the fact that they've kept the size perspective from the original shorts as well. It does look really nice. It is really weird still. Like, it's just such an odd concept, and maybe that's what I like about it, and maybe that's why it works and clicked for a lot of people. It's certainly an original idea. It's technically a stop motion animated, you know, thing. We could always do with more of those. And yeah, I mean, I'm kind of rooting for this film, honestly. I really hope it does well. Hopefully more people, you know, discover this if they haven't. I mean, sure, the original short has about 32 million views, but, you know, somehow I missed it. And for those of you who haven't seen it or you want to rewatch it or whatever, I've put a link to the original first short in the description and download link in case you want more reference, because yeah, this trailer just kind of throws you in, not expecting that you already know who this character is, but yeah, it just, it doesn't really ease you into it. It's just kind of just, there's a shell with an eye and shoes, and it talks. So yeah, I respect the boldness of the short and the film that's coming out very, very soon. And yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for the main things I wanted to talk about. I do have a discussion that I want to do. I know discussions usually involve two people, but I'm going to do this anyway. And it is mainly in light of the fact that Record Store Day 2022 is fast approaching. It's actually going to be on April 23rd. Now, depending on certain things and how things line up, I may do the podcast before Record Store Day or after Record Store Day. The reason I say that is because I think the next podcast is going to be going up on the 25th, so after Record Store Day. And typically I record the podcast, I'll give you a little bit of behind the curtains, Friday evening to Saturday mornings. So we'll see what happens. So depending on what does happen, I might be talking about the things that I hopefully buy on the next podcast. But, that's in the future. Let's talk about right now. And I'm going to talk about a few things that I want to be collecting and adding to my collection from Record Store Day. So let's talk about the must-haves for me, the ones that I'm willing to drop money for, the ones that I really, 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 really want. And let's go in a somewhat alphabetical order. The first one is going to be Belle Biv DeVoe. I always struggle with it. Belle Biv DeVoe, Poison. This is their first song. Everyone's heard it. It's a classic. It's still unfortunately relevant today, given the subject matter and what they're talking about. It is a great track, and having this in my collection would be nice. And the album cover itself encapsulates the era and time perfectly. If you haven't already heard this song somehow, I mean, if you haven't heard this song, all I'm going to say is, this podcast is for 18-year-olds only. But yeah, really want this for my collection. The next thing is going to be Blur with Bustin and Dronin. I believe that's how it's pronounced, or Bustin plus Dronin. However, yeah, it's meant to be said. Yeah, I'm a fan of Blur. I kind of have to be, given that I'm a big fan of Gorillaz and that they're one of my favorite artists, but I don't actually own anything from them. No vinyls, no CDs, no real music. I've kind of just heard their stuff, which I guess is a shame to some extent. And this remix album sounds interesting and might be a good starting point for my collection of their discography, because they don't have that many albums, as far as I'm aware. This, I guess, album was originally a Japanese-only release, and you'd be surprised how many exclusive songs and albums were only released in Japan. Like, trust me, just type in your top 5 favorite artists, and you'll be surprised how many bonus songs on your favorite albums were not on that album because they were on the Japanese CD or whatever. I can't wait to hear the radio one, like, Peel Sessions, although I know one of them isn't present for some reason, copyright issues most likely, which are always a pain. And I love the fact that it's going to have the original Japanese OBI strip, which, for those of you who don't know, most CDs and vinyls released in Japan, they have like a sort of piece of paper that goes over the, I guess, left side of the CD, which kind of gives you general information and, other credits over it. I mean, if you type that in, you'll see what I mean. But yeah, it's going to have that as well, which is very authentic, as well as a replica of the insert that originally came with the release. So I'm hoping to get that. Next thing I want to talk about and hopefully get is Brian Bennett's Voyage, a journey into Discoid funk. As the title suggests, it's a very funky, grand, cosmic, and sounds like it could have been the soundtrack to a space opera film that never released. It's a very interesting album that I've come back and listened to certain songs a couple of times, for multiple reasons, and it is dubbed a space disco, and there aren't a lot of albums that sound like this. It's a fantastic album and an essential listen, in my opinion, for various reasons. I mean, every song could be like the main theme and ending song for a sci-fi film, and each song takes you on like a cosmic adventure. there are very few albums that I've heard that transport you to another world and get you thinking creatively. If you need inspiration, especially sci-fi inspiration, music to study to, or want to hear something like relaxing or epic, I highly recommend this album. I think a lot of people can get into this album. It's not very slow. It does have a fast pace. It is quite groovy in some senses, but I feel like it's a general crowd pleaser to in a lot of ways. And I do hope that they do include the working mixes on this re-release. They are essentially the, I guess, versions that he did before he did the mastering version. So a lot of practicing, you can actually hear Brian himself doing the time counts and time signatures for the beats and all that, which is interesting, but if not, it's not the end of the world. Next one I'm hoping to get is Coolio with It Takes a Thief. This is his debut album, I believe released back in 1994. Most people know him for Gangsta's Paradise. Everyone else knows him from Kenan and Kel. But yeah, for a rap album, it's very funky and smooth and rather comedic in a lot of areas. I mean, the first track samples Lakeside's Fantastic Voyage, which is a very underrated song and artist. It does it perfectly. It not only, I guess, preserves the funk elements of that original song, but it also transforms it in a slightly more hip-hop but sort of like party sense, which is great, and I love what he did with that. The samples themselves are pretty interesting on this album as well. For example, he samples Slick Rick, and the song Ugly Bitches is basically samples and parodies I always forget the artist's name, Delegation. It samples Delegation's Oh Honey in a really comedic and funny way. The chorus and hook is hilarious. You have to listen to the song to hear it, but I love the fact that it changes with each after each verse to some extent. Coolio on this album, kind of listening back to it, he's a really good storyteller, and his wordplay and lyrical skills are, they're up there. Ghetto Cartoons, for example, tells a story about iconic cartoon characters in a ghetto setting in a really clever narrative. I mean, for example, there's one section where he talks about how Minnie Mouse gets shot and Kermit the Frog is the only one who sees the shooting, but he's too scared to say anything. Just bizarre and weird stuff that, it's the kind of thing that I can only really see someone like MF Doom, making a song about. I mean, MF Doom has got some really weird topics, even to the point where, one song on the Mouse and the Mask album, where he essentially says he's sick of, the same old things being rapped about, so he decides to rap about vats of urine. It's that kind of creativity and oddness that make these two artists stand out, in my opinion. And you've got other songs like, Mama, I'm in Love with a Gangster, featuring LeSean. It's a great story about Coolio being in prison, and while him and his partner essentially lament the situation, there's a nice back and forth between, what both of them are doing, how they're experiencing and seeing everything from that kind of perspective, and it does take a very interesting turn in terms of a narrative and that kind of situation that unfortunately is still very prominent in today's culture, I guess. And the title song itself, It Takes a Thief, has Coolio essentially describing his methods, reasoning, and current act of breaking into someone's house, which is quite an exciting story to some extent. Songs on this album really showcases Coolio's personality, perspective on where he's come from, and why he is the way he is. It's interesting if you've never heard this artist and kind of want to hear something that's a little bit older, but I'd say still pretty accessible for a lot of people, especially if you do like rap music. And the last must-have is, of course, going to be Viktor Vaughn with Vaudeville Villain. I already own this album on vinyl. I have the first print too, but it's MF Doom. It can't hurt to have another copy. I mean, vinyls have a set limited number of plays or times they can be played before they stop working, which is something a lot of people who are just getting into vinyl don't know. Vinyl doesn't last forever, unfortunately. It is an analog format. It is a physical sense. It can stop working if you do not look after your vinyls properly, or clean them, or play them too many times. That's why so many vinyls get released every 15 years or so, because that's how long it roughly takes if you play them all the time, that is, but I don't know the exact science behind it. If it's out there, I don't know. But yeah, I really want this album again because it's a fantastic album. It's one of MF Doom's most underrated releases, and if you've been getting into MF Doom in the wake of his unfortunate passing, please don't miss this album. It is worth your time. And let's talk about a few maybes. I'm just going to run down the list, say a few things about them. Charles Mingus, The Lost Album from Ronnie Scott's. I love me some Charles Mingus. He's one of my favorite jazz composers next to The Loneliest Monk. It should be interesting to actually have some of his stuff on vinyl as well. I do like a bit of jazz, but I like the more classical, soulful blues stuff. So hopefully looking forward to add that to my collection. You got Frankie Goes to Hollywood with the Altered Reels. This is a collection of, I believe, 2 songs or a few songs of just different takes that was originally on cassette and only on cassette for some bizarre reason. The album cover itself is fantastic. I'd highly recommend looking at that. It's really cool. I'm surprised that photo hasn't really seen the light of day anywhere else. Next is going to be Pixies, live from Coachella from 2024. I'm a big fan of the Pixies. I'm not a massive fan of their newer stuff after, I forget what the last album, after the 4th album. But this should be interesting to hear them play. I've heard some of their songs played live and they do sound great. So I wonder how they're going to sound, because I'd imagine if it's 2004, it would be after a break, but before the 5th album, which I believe was called Indie Cindy, which I wasn't a massive fan of. But, in terms of that era, I'd say it's probably one of their better albums of the 3 they've released. I see, the problem is I care so little about their new stuff that I can't even remember how many albums they have out. But yeah, next one is going to be Rick Astley, Whenever You Need Somebody. Yes, this is the album that features Never Gonna Give You Up. One thing a lot of people forget about Rick Astley and this album is that it's actually really good. Like, there's a reason why you like the song Never Gonna Give You Up. There's a reason why it became a meme. There's a reason why we still know of him and talk about him, and why he still kind of has one of the #1 selling songs and albums. It's because the man made a good album. That's why. I might try and get this one because, yeah, like I said, it's a good album. And obviously because I want to rickroll people. The meme that will never die next to Among Us. But, next we have The Streets with original pirate material. This is going to be a box set of his, regarding his first debut album. The Streets, rapper, kind of grime artist, house, garage from that era. He used to be a DJ for Kiss FM, which I believe is still around, or I think it might got renamed. I'm not too sure. He was a DJ for Kiss AM. I can't, stumbling over my words again. For Kiss FM, and I used to love his shows. He used to do some really dumb stuff on the streets, like literally on the streets. Like they'd have game shows and stuff like that. I honestly wonder if some of that stuff is on YouTube or archived. Yeah, if anything, type in Kiss FM, The Streets, and maybe you'll see what I mean. But I love the way this guy approached music. He has a sort of more, "you alright mate," kind of like spoken word way in which he raps, and a lot of the songs that he has made have kind of become quite iconic. I can't remember if the song Cry Your Eyes Mate is on this album. I don't know, but he's got some classic tracks on there. I would highly recommend, if you want to hear the most British thing from the 90s ever, if you're not from England or, you weren't born then, listen to this album or anything from the Streets, because, yeah, it's perfect. And Goldie Looking Chain as well. The last one I'm hoping to maybe get is the Vince Gaudia trio. Essentially the guys who did a lot of the music and composed music for the Peanuts animation. This is the compilation titled Baseball Theme, which I have failed to get anything of theirs on vinyl for 3-4 years consecutively, which is quite unfortunate. But yeah, I'm hoping maybe this time I can get one. I actually love a lot of the music that was composed for the Peanuts cartoons. The Peanuts cartoons themselves are a little bit too slow for me, but I love the flow and the general vibe of it. It's fortunately and unfortunately the kind of show that I would just put in the background, if that makes sense. And I mean no ill worth in that statement. I think it's still a lovely cartoon. I think everything established with the Peanuts, except for how mass marketed it is great. But yeah, that's what I'm hoping to grab from Record Store Day this year, if I even go. I will tell you this, I don't know if I will go, mainly because I have spent a lot of money recently on, or extra money, on things that I wouldn't usually buy. I guess that's the right way to put it. I guess what I'm trying to say is I spent a lot of money on my room. I spent I spent over £200 on my room. Obviously, that money could have gone to Record Store Day, although I don't intend to spend 200 on records. I mean, not in one go at least. And I don't even think all my must-haves would total up to 200 as far as I'm aware. Record Store Day prices are quite pricey because they are limited to about a few thousand copies. For example, which one was it? I can't remember. One of them, I remember seeing the number of how many there's going to be. I believe, the Brian Bennett, the Voyager vinyl, that's limited to 4,500 copies, which, isn't a lot when you think about it. But here's the thing, if everyone who's going to Record Store Day wants that, and if you do the maths, obviously every record store that's participating will probably only have, maximum of 20 copies, if that. So yeah, it can get a bit vicious or feisty, but I don't know if I'll actually even go. I'm a bit worried about money because something could happen. If nothing important comes up before then I will go. But yeah, the other thing that does make me want to go is obviously because I have so little to get and because I want to beat the scalpers to the punch. Don't buy from scalpers on eBay and stuff like that. Don't give them what they want because they always push the price up. But yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap up this podcast. We got the video of the episode, which is going to be for Wet Leg with Your Mum. For some reason, I've been ignoring this duo or band. I'm not really sure what you refer to them as. But their new album's out. I've just listened to a couple of tracks. Yeah, I like it. Maybe you guys will like their music as well. I think the video for this song is pretty awesome. I love how zany and weird it is. Like, it's definitely got its own style, and the girls themselves are certainly in their own world if this is the kind of music video they're going to continuously produce or have it be the face of their image. And even the album cover itself is just, very bizarre. But yeah, that's going to be the video of the episode. And yeah, sorry for such a short podcast, and sorry for the noise or any extra noise you heard in this episode. I am recording it a little bit too late, or later than I usually do, because like I said, I have been dealing with my room, and no joke, I legitimately forgot about the podcast. I'm currently off of work right now, so my main focus has just been doing my room and relaxing. So yeah, it almost wasn't a podcast, so I really hope you guys enjoy this, and hopefully it didn't sound too slapdash in some example. But yeah, I guess I will end this podcast like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon, and I will see you on the next podcast.